Hello and welcome to another Walking Dead video. Today we'll be doing my top 10 best episodes in the Walking Dead universe we got in 2022. But before we get into this, make sure to click the little icon on the top right to go to my top 10 worst episodes of 2022. And remember, this is just my personal opinion, and if you have a different opinion, please tell me down below, as I would love to know your top 10 favourite episodes. But let's jump right into this and do some honourable mentions, and we have three. We have The Walking Dead Season 11 Episode 18, The Walking Dead Season 11 Episode 12, and The Walking Dead Season 11 Episode 20. And all these episodes, in my opinion, were so very close to be on this list. However, I feel like some of these episodes are lacking that thing that makes it in my list. And now the honorable mentions out of the way, let's jump right into this and talk about number 10, and we have The Walking Dead Season 11 Episode 14, and this episode is really good. I would have to say this episode is not as good as the episode that comes before it, but this episode is very fun. I really like our characters sneaking around in this episode, and this episode really kind of breaks the kind of stigma we have with The Walking Dead, where the mid-season episodes are always kind of filler and bad. Like, this episode was a mid-season episode. It was 14, it wasn't 16 or 9, and it was very action-packed. We had a little villain arc in this episode, or the previous two episodes, and it was just very much capped off at the end of this episode. We have a cool death at the end. It is gripping with our characters sneaking around, and when Herschel finds out that Negan is the one that killed his father, very good. Acting great all around. This episode is just very entertaining. However, it barely made it on this list, I'm going to be honest. Now moving on to number 9, and we have Fear the Walking Dead Season 7 Episode 11. And I think this is probably my most controversial one, because a lot of people didn't like the back half of Fear. And I agree, it's the back half is terrible. However, this one episode is really good. This episode, we get Daniel back to his old self, even though he is senile dementia Daniel, but we get Daniel going back to his season 3, season 2, I'm crazy and I will do anything for his daughter. And what I really like about this episode is it gives Luciana something to do for the first time since season 3. So this episode really focuses on some side characters, and I really like this episode. The only thing that annoys me about this episode, the only downside of this episode, is West. I feel like he is really annoying. West is just really annoying, and he just turns evil at the end of this episode for no reason. And this episode does really set up a Daniel and Lucy kinda going down together arc, where Lucy breaks her own heart to tell Daniel a lie so Daniel can stick together for this war. And even though it pans out, that moment where it happens is so impactful, and it's really good. It's a shame that it was never carried on, but this just barely scraped it in. And I feel like I have a soft spot for Fear Season 7. I know a lot of people hate it and think it's the worst thing, but personally, I think Fear Season 7 does have some gold episodes, and this is one of the few gold we get in the nuggets of the turd. So, in 8th place, and this might be slightly cheating, however, technically, it's an episode. It goes for 44 minutes. It is Fear the Walking Dead Dead in the Water, that spin-off, one-off, special episode we got. And this episode has no right to be as good as it is. This one-time special, episode is really good. And because it's not on, TV, it was all, on AMC Plus and stuff like that, they had no limitations with swearing and stuff like that, so we had swearing. It did feel a bit cheap with the walkers and stuff like that. It didn't have the budget of the shows. However, it was well written. It was all set inside the submarine, so it had a cool set. It was all kind of claustrophobic. It was well paced. And this episode, it has something that nothing else has. Very smart characters. Every time we have seen our characters get introduced to a walker for the first time across all the shows, they've always acted dumb. In this show, our main character Roy sees a walker, goes, "What?" They just pin it down and kill it straight away. They're like, "Bro, you're a bit sus, we're gonna kill you." And these characters are so smart in this episode, and I felt like I had to put it on this list because I really enjoyed it. And this is a shame that it was only a one-off thing. It was one of those webisodes, but I'm counting it because I really enjoyed Dead in the Water. In 7th place is The Walking Dead Season 11 Episode 9. Even though I do not like the arc this is connected to, this is a very entertaining episode. This episode is very action-packed, and it's very much about closing off the Reaper arc and setting up the Commonwealth arc. I really like the ending to this episode, but with all the character moments in this episode, we have Gabriel meeting the Reaper's version of him. Really, really good with that whole conversation scene about, oh, is God not talking to you anymore? Absolutely fantastic. We also have the Reapers feel like a threat in this episode, and the Reapers like kind of take down everyone. My favourite scene is when you have all Maggie's group trying to fight this one Reaper, and he's taking them all down, but Negan kind of walks in and he wins because he's smart. He throws something in his eye, fights dirty, and knocks him out. This episode is just really good, and I think this is the episode where I actually started to like Maggie. Back in my part 1 reviews for season 11, I was always just dunking on Maggie because I didn't really hated her. But episode 9 changed my opinion. I really liked Maggie by the end of this episode. So this episode had to be on this list. It was very enjoyable, very fun, and it was a very big episode. It looks amazing. It's paced well. Moving on to number 6 is The Walking Dead season 11, episode 17. This episode is such a good opener for the final 8 episodes. We have Lance in full villainous swing trying to hunt down Daryl and group. We do have some issues with kind of Negan teleporting around, going from this like kind of area, I think it's outside the city, to suddenly in processing to suddenly in the Commonwealth, all within a matter of minutes it seems. However, with that only issue I have, this episode is very entertaining to see Pamela losing her grip on the Commonwealth for the first time, to have Lance just full out trying to kill everyone, have our group kind of hide in and trying to avoid Lance as much as possible. But there are some slight issues with the Commonwealth troopers feeling like stormtroopers can't shoot for anything. But it's overall a very fun episode and has such a great ending. And that cliffhanger is so good. Even though I don't like how episode 18 just kind of fixed it immediately with Mercer teleporting in. This episode ending with Lance getting the upper hand, actually being smart and kind of set himself as a trap. Even though he was walking into a trap, he set the trap as a trap. Absolutely amazing. This episode is fun from start to finish. Now we are in the top 5, and in 5th place is The Walking Dead season 11, episode 13. And this episode is so good. I remember really loving this episode, and I think it's mostly because of the way the story was told. And I know they have done this before, but I feel like this is the best time they've told the story in a way where they follow one character, they go through their story, and then you go back to another point, and you follow that character back to that same point. And it really has this mystery. It's so well structured, so well paced, and I really, really like that very out of left field flip that Toby has, where you have our characters walk in to this very dangerous place, and we have our characters like, okay, come here, and you're like, it's not going well. Toby immediately takes over control, and it's so good to have Gabriel and Aaron just kind of taking out soldiers and then trying to avoid it and get out of there. This is such a good episode, and it is way better than episode 14, which has more action, I would say, with the soldiers in full effect being evil. But this episode is so good paced, so well structured, and this is definitely the Aaron and Gabriel show, and it's a real shame because those guys were shafted, especially Aaron, throughout all of season 11. But this episode and the next episode were all about Aaron and Gabriel, and we get the return of Negan in this episode. Such a fantastic episode. In 4th place is The Walking Dead season 11, episode 16, and this episode is just off the walls in action, in story. Like, we have Lance as most villainous. Lance is my favourite character in this episode, and he is definitely one of the best villains because of this episode. We do have Leah return, and she does do some really stupid things, which gets herself killed, where she's like, I must kill Maggie. She captures Maggie and refuses to kill Maggie, so then because of that, Maggie gets the upper hand, and then she dies. Leah is absolutely like a dunce in this episode. However, everything around it, I liked the locusts in this episode. I really, really liked the dumpster / junkyard fight scene with Aaron, Gabriel, and Daryl, and the soldiers. And for once, a soldier actually hits a character. Even though it's a graze, a soldier actually does hit their target. Aaron gets shot in this episode. This is a very, very fun episode, and the ending is just absolutely iconic. It has amazing music, amazing shots, and we see the fall of Oceanside yet again to the Commonwealth. This episode really does set up the final episodes really well, and it is such a gripping episode. I don't like Leah because of one bit, however I really liked the return of the Reaper music, and Leah just felt like a Terminator, an unstoppable force in this episode up until the cabin scene. That's the only issue I have with this episode. It is almost perfect up until the cabin scene at the end of this episode. Now in third place is The Walking Dead Season 11 episode 22, and this is where stuff just loses it. This is when they're like, okay, we're in the final episodes, get ready. And this episode is so fun. This episode has 3 plots, and every single one of them is gripping. We see the return of Luke, we find out what happens to Oceanside, we have more variant walkers, we also get to see Mercer change sides. I really like that. But the big reason why this is number 3 is because of Jeffrey D. Morgan and Negan, because his performance is so good, and this is definitely the best Negan episode we got in season 11, and maybe throughout all of The Walking Dead. I wouldn't say it's better than his Negan, but this episode is so good. To see Negan kind of more or less complete, he isn't fully completed, but he more or less completes his character arc and realizes that all these other people are better than him, and they deserve to survive. So he tries to sacrifice himself, and the ending when it doesn't go the way he's planned, and is it the moment where are they going to kill Annie, are they going to not? Sadly they didn't go through with it, but that moment, watching that for the first time, so amazing. Move on to second place is The Walking Dead Season 11 episode 23, and this episode, when it hit me, the show's going to end. This episode is really amazing. We have the walkers get into the Commonwealth, we have Lydia getting bit, the ending with Judith getting shot, and the walkers surrounding our heroes, with them all fighting together to try and get through this tiny gap, but only Daryl gets there. Absolutely fantastic this episode is. This episode really sets up the final episode so well, and I really love our characters taking their time to get to the Commonwealth so we can have all these little moments talking about characters that are no longer there, like Carl, Rick and Michonne. And I feel like the best part in the train sequence is definitely Ezekiel and Negan, when Negan admits that he knows they're all better than him and he wants them to survive, and that's why he did what he did in the previous episode. This episode is so gripping from start to finish. This episode just almost perfect. But number 1 is going to be, of course, The Walking Dead Season 11 episode 24. This episode is the final episode, and it ends The Walking Dead so well. A lot of characters do get their perfect endings and the end to their character arc, like Gabriel having his end to the character arc be he finally opens the gates to let other people in to save them, when the first time we met him is he shut the gates on people to save himself. Perfect kind of symmetry in a way. Negan's character arc ending with Maggie, absolutely perfect. Daryl's ending, and the return of Rick and Michonne. This episode does have a slight issue with, I feel like it could have been a bit longer. However, the way they got rid of Pamela and the "we are not the Walking Dead" scene, great. It could have been a bit better, but it was great for what it is. What this episode is good for what it is. It's not perfect by any means, but it is such a solid ending for such a great show, and it ties up almost every single thread that they had on The Walking Dead, more or less. Like, we had some massive reveals in this episode. We find out what happened to Rick, where he's been, what's Michonne been doing. Daryl finds out about Rick and goes to go find him, and the endings for almost every character is just so good and finite. We do also get to see Rick in the episode itself at the end, and the ending where we are alive and it flashes through all the characters. Absolutely amazing. This episode is such a good way to end such a great show, and it had to be number 1. It really did. This is definitely one of my favourite episodes of The Walking Dead, so it had to be here. But remember, this is just my list. So tell me down below, do you agree with my list? Do you disagree? And if you disagree, tell me your list down below, and give me a little reason why those are your favourite episodes of 2022. However, this is it for me today, so if you want more Walking Dead content, please look on the screen. I do recommend you click on something, because you'll find something I like, guaranteed. If you want my top 10 worst videos of 2022, look in the top right. But make sure to like and subscribe to the channel to keep up to date with all things Walking Dead, 2 videos a week, every week, and to help out the channel. But this is it for me today, so goodbye, peace out, and I'll talk to you at a later date.